Okay, so I hit the record button, so we're going to begin. So welcome everyone for attending our one of our many programs we've been putting on for this fall. Thank you for participating with us in Zoom and being part of the NKA program that's been put together for you. This, just to give you a brief history on our program itself, it's over 15 years old now. And it did begin in Pocatello with the ISU University. And it's an all volunteer program, along with our presenters today who volunteer their time and knowledge also with us. And it takes many people to put these programs together. We start maybe 6 months to a year ahead of time, trying to find different programs that we feel would be of interest. So if you know of anyone or you know of some type of presentation that you think would interest our group, please let me know. I am on the curriculum committee and we're always looking for new classes. The program itself was put together with AARP and Idaho State University in Meridian, Treasure Valley, and that all was around 2014. And now it's just become much bigger each year. Of course, this past fall, we had to end up putting it on a visual program. So we aren't able to be with you in person, but we're going to keep this going. And hopefully at this point, we will be doing it again this September for the next session. And it probably will be on Zoom unless things change a lot for AARP. So we're proud to be putting this on for you. And we as volunteers are happy that we are getting so many people who are interested in all of our programs. And the curriculum is just, you know, all types of potential for all of you to be interested in. So if you'd like to go to and participate in any of our other programs, please go to our C event site and you can still register for any of the programs that are through May of this year. That would be great. Today, the program is 10 Signs of Alzheimer's and Dementia. We have two different people who are presenting with us. We have Rick Vogel, who's a program manager, and Stacy Gunnarsson, who is a healthcare professional. And I think I'm going to let them just go ahead and introduce themselves so that you'll know a little bit about how they came about putting this together and how they want to offer that their presentation to us. So go ahead. Either one of you want to start and give us a brief bio on yourselves?
Well, I'll go ahead. Excuse me, I'll go ahead and start first. My name is Rick Vogel, and I'm the program manager for the Alzheimer's Association for the Greater Idaho chapter. This program today, 10 Warning Signs of Alzheimer's, is one of a series that the Alzheimer's Association offers. And we were fortunate to be asked by AARP, who we do work with anyway, to present this, and there will be another one next week that we'll be presenting. So just one other thing, and you'll see a slide on the end. The Alzheimer's Association gets grant dollars from the Idaho Commission on Aging to provide educational webinars to the folks in Idaho. And Boise State University, the Center for the Study of Aging, gathers demographic data of those that participate. So at the end, I'll put up a slide and it'll have my email address. And I'd like to send you a copy of that survey. It just take 2 or 3 minutes to fill out, and it is anonymous, and it just basically is asking about the presentation itself and then some demographic information. And again, it's completely anonymous. So thanks, folks, for having us, and I'll turn this over to Stacy Gunnarsson.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I am a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association. I have a business locally here in Denver, or excuse me, wow. I moved here to Boise from Denver 13 years ago. I have a business called Granny on the Move, and I help seniors find the care they need and the financial resources to pay for it. But today I'm here as a volunteer for the association. I've been a volunteer for the association for various things, including support groups and education for over 17 years, and I enjoy working with them. The association has a wealth of information on their website, alz.org. We're going to go over one of those presentations this morning that is offered on the website. So the program we're going to talk about today is the 10 Warning Signs of Alzheimer's. I'm going to present and talk to you, and Rick is actually going to be running the presentation in the background. So as we go from slide to slide, you'll hear me say, next slide, please, over and over. But that's how we're presenting it. It makes life a little easier for me on this side. And one thing I did want to note is if I look like I'm looking away from you, I have two screens here, and I have one with my notes and one with the presentation. And my camera happens to be on the presentation one. So I'm looking at you on both sides, but if I'm looking away from the camera, that's why.
And Stacy, I just wanted to let the audience know that if they have any questions, they could put them in the chat window, or if they would like to ask them directly, you can use the reactions, raise your hand, or just raise your hand and we'll watch for you. If we don't catch you, please unmute yourself and ask your questions so that you don't forget it along the way. Is that fine with you, Stacy?
That sounds great. I look forward to it. In fact, please don't hesitate to do that because it helps me know what you guys would like for me to go into more depth about. But with that being said, let's get started. You ready, Rick? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So we're going to talk today about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. The learning objectives we're going to go over today is we're going to talk about how to describe typical age-related memory loss and thinking and behavior changes. We're going to recognize the common warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia. And we're going to discuss different tips for approaching someone about memory concerns. And I'll explain the importance of early detection and benefits of diagnosis. We'll identify possible tests and assessments for diagnostic protocol, and we will name the resources available through the Alzheimer's Association. Next slide, Rick. I'm trying to minimize so I can see this better. All right, so first we're going to meet the Garcias. Throughout today's presentation, we're going to periodically check in with the Garcias and watch video snippets. The Garcias are a fictitious family. We're going to follow along with Mary's daughters as they discuss mom's memory changes and their concerns and what they do to take action on that. Let's get started. Next slide, please, Rick. So Mary is a 73-year-old widow. She lives alone. She's a retired teacher who has always meticulously cared for her home. Her daughter, Lydia, has recently been noticing laundry piling up and junk mail and old newspapers lying around the house. Next slide, Rick. So one sister is texting the other sister about her concerns, that she's worried about mom. And wondering if it's normal for her to be a little forgetful with age. So actually, we're going to reach out to Dr. Salloway, and that's what I would recommend, is to reach out to your doctor. Push play, Rick.
As we get older, cognitive problems become more noticeable for almost everybody, and it can vary from person to person. Typically with age, people have trouble coming up with the word they want right when they want it. They have trouble remembering names, and they don't think quite as quickly. What's more concerning, or what might be the beginning of a memory problem, is people have a lot of trouble coming up with words or names, and it's happening more frequently, and the words or names don't necessarily come to them later. And then they start misplacing things, but not just once in a while, because we all misplace things, but more often. And it begins to interfere day to day. That should be a warning sign for people that this might be the beginning of a memory problem.
So we're all here today to learn more about dementia and Alzheimer's and identify the common warning signs of the disease. You may have heard the terms dementia and Alzheimer's used interchangeably. While they are related, there are significant differences. Alzheimer's is actually a type of dementia. So we're going to learn more about this from some dementia and association experts. First, we're going to hear from Dr. Snyder.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein, and frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alice Alzheimer's described specific changes in the brain, what we call the formation of plaques and tangles. Now, Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and is thought to impact memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. The cerebrum fills up most of your skull. It is part of the brain most involved in remembering, problem solving, thinking, and even feelings. There are about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons throughout the brain that transmit messages in order for us to create memories, feelings, and thoughts. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to the brain tissue loss, or what we call shrinkage, and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss, problems with thinking, planning, behavioral issues, and even at the end stages, problems with swallowing.
I don't know if you guys caught that, but Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, accounts for 80% of all of the cases of dementia. You can go ahead with that video, Rick.
What the warning signs of Alzheimer's are and to be on the lookout. We know that we change over time, and the warning signs of Alzheimer's can be warning signs of a number of things, but when you see those in yourself or in someone you care about, it's important to check it out, to consult with a doctor, to find out what you're dealing with.
As Ruth said, it's important to know what the warning signs are and to be on the lookout for those marked changes. The Alzheimer's Association, as a leader in the area, has developed a list of 10 warning signs to help people understand the difference between normal aging and the common signs of possible dementia. We're going to go over that next. Next slide, Rick. So we're going to start with memory loss that disrupts daily life. So the number one thing is memory loss that disrupts daily life. One of the most common signs of Alzheimer's, especially early on, is forgetting recently learned information. Others include forgetting important dates or events, repeatedly asking the same questions, and increasingly relying on memory aids or leaning on others. A typical age-related change is sometimes forgetting information, but remembering it later. It is not normal, however, to forget that a new granddaughter was born or something like that. So, next slide. So the challenges, so number 2 is challenges in planning or solving problems. Some people may experience new difficulties in executive functioning, including developing or following a plan or difficulty concentrating. And conversely, a more typical age-related change is making occasional errors when managing bills or household finances. We're going to hear from John, who is living with dementia with Lewy bodies, about how he experienced this early warning sign.
I was probably spending 4 to 5 times more time preparing for something than I did, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because of I would lose my thought, I'd lose my focus, I'd get anxious, I wouldn't get to sleep. I was thinking of this, I was in my sleep, I was thinking about what I was anxious about, which was what I was trying to remember, which was what I was trying to prepare, which I was trying to do. So it was really a vicious circle of, so I was able to control it a lot, so that people wouldn't see things and there weren't things to be seen. It's what was disturbing me was what effort I had to put into to do the things I used to do more easily.
Next is Actually, sorry, we skipped number 3, Rick.
Sorry, I had quick fingers there.
You're fine.
Sorry, folks.
So number 3 is difficulty completing familiar tasks. People living with dementia often find it hard to complete daily tasks that used to be managed with ease, such as driving to a familiar place like the grocery store, writing a grocery list, or remembering how to play a favorite game. Conversely, a typical age-related change would be occasionally needing help to use a microwave or a remote. This could also include having trouble with other electronics or new technology that the person hasn't had the opportunity to engage with before. But it's different when you're, look, for instance, what I always tell people is it's normal to lose your car keys. It's not normal to forget what your car keys are for. Or if you've had the same TV remote for 10 years, it's not normal to forget how to operate it. If you had a new TV remote that you just got in the last week or whatever, it would be normal to forget how to operate it and fumble through it. But if you've had it for 10 years, then that would be a concern. Next, we're going to hear from an expert about this.
Some people have difficulty with math or with reading in a way that's unusual to them. And once again, this is a change in that person. So for example, we all know somebody who was never able to balance their checkbook, right? So that wouldn't be a warning sign for them. But if somebody who always balanced their checkbook to the penny suddenly was paying bills, the same bill over and over, and not able to balance their finances, well, that would be a sign for them.
So the next sign is confusion with time or place. An individual living with Alzheimer's or dementia may lose track of dates, seasons, or the passage of time. They may have trouble understanding something if it's not currently happening, or become confused about where they are or how they got there. This can become more dramatic or profound in the middle or late stages. A more typical age-related change could be getting confused about what day it is or when a scheduled appointment is, but figuring it out later. But if you are, like, for instance, like we talked about the grocery store, if you're at the grocery store, you don't recognize you're at the grocery store, obviously that's a problem. Or you're at church, someplace that you've been multiple times, or you think it's Sunday and it's actually Wednesday and you show up to go to church in the morning, that could be a problem. And that would be a sign of dementia. Next slide, Rick. So number 5 is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. You'll actually see people tripping. Running memory care facilities, one of the issues we've had is people were putting dark colored rugs by the door, and somebody with dementia would recognize that as a hole because the dark compared to the light colored carpet or whatever, it looks like a hole. And it's because of their difficulty understanding the visual images and spatial relationships. Some individuals with Alzheimer's or other dementia may experience vision problems, which can lead to difficulty with balance, trouble reading, and problems judging distance and determining color and contrast, like I just discussed. Vision changes such as cataracts are a more typical age-related change. This sign shows us that these changes are not just about memory. It's important to think about all of the other ways that someone's daily life may be impacted by any of the changes. One of our experts will explain this more.
Alzheimer's disease is not just a disease of memory. It can affect other things too. It can affect the way that we perceive what we see. So sometimes somebody in the early stages of Alzheimer's might go to the eye doctor because they're having trouble seeing, and in fact, their vision is just fine, but the way they're perceiving what they're seeing may be difficult.
I'm actually going through this personally with my mom right now. And I bring up the word dementia and everybody just cringes and nobody wants to talk about it. So I'm dealing with it on a personal level. Anyway, my mom has, we've noticed different things like on the sidewalls of the tires, her tires are all scuffed up because she keeps hitting curbs. And there's a refrigerator in the garage that she keeps hitting to stop the car when she pulls into the garage. And my mom's in her 60s. She's pretty young, so my family doesn't want to hear it. but I talked to my dad about it privately, and we do have her seen a neurologist now. So number 6 is new problems with words in speaking or writing. Individuals may have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may stop in the middle of a conversation and forget what they're talking about and continuously repeat themselves. They may also struggle with finding the right word or calling things by the wrong name. We actually call this aphasia. They may start using more descriptive terms to talk about something rather than the name of the actual item. Like, go sit on that comfy, cushy thing over there instead of go sit on the couch, that kind of thing. Let's hear from Phil, who's living with Alzheimer's, about this warning sign.
The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life, you know, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
Next slide, Rick. Number 7 is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. This sign often causes concern for people. I want to clarify that this is not about losing your keys on occasion, like we talked about before. Misplacing things from time to time is normal, but not being able to retrace your steps to find them, that is not normal. A person with Alzheimer's disease may lose things and not be able to recall when it was last seen or identify the location where it was placed, or he or she may place things in an unusual place, such as putting shoes in or on top of the refrigerator. Because the lack of executive function and awareness, the person may grow increasingly suspicious of others and start accusing others of stealing their items. This is a very common sign of dementia. You see this a lot, where they think that their children have stolen an item out of the house or even money because they thought that they had more than they did in their account or whatever, or they don't remember that they gifted money to a charity. I actually had a gentleman I cared for years ago who was a dentist, a well-known dentist in Denver. And unfortunately, his family found out he had Alzheimer's because he was only 61 years old and he had given away all of his money. He had bankrupted his dentist practice because he had volunteered for an organization in Africa for 20 years. And for whatever reason, he was supporting them financially for a long time. And then he just kind of lost track of, you know, what was okay and what wasn't okay. And he actually gifted them all of his money, and his practice was bankrupt. And that's how his wife found out something was wrong, because she had never been involved in the finances before. So we're going to go on to number 8 now. Actually, sorry, we can hear from the expert about the misplacing things first. Sorry, Rick.
So some people wonder if, if they lose their keys or their glasses or their purse, is that a sign of Alzheimer's? And one thing that I would say about that is, for most of us, we might misplace something, but then if we retrace our steps, we can usually find it. We can usually remember. For a person with Alzheimer's, sometimes they're not able to retrace their steps. Sometimes that memory is just gone. And so when they do find their keys next to the phone because they got interrupted by a phone call when they were coming in and they set their keys down in an unusual space, so there they are next to the phone. If that happened to you or me, we'd probably remember, oh yeah, the phone was ringing when I came in the door. I put down my keys. The person with Alzheimer's might not remember. They might wonder who's moving their keys around because they never put their keys by the phone. So that's just a little bit of a difference in some of the dynamics with losing things in Alzheimer's.
We find things in the darndest places in memory care facilities. We often find false teeth in potted plants, or hearing aids in potted plants, or hidden between the mattresses. I'd say at least 6 out of 10 times when somebody accuses others of stealing their items, we can find it between the mattresses on the bed. So we're going to move on now to number 8, decreased or poor judgment. So individuals may experience changes in judgment or decision-making, such as using poor judgment when dealing with money, like I talked about with John, the dentist, or paying less attention to hygiene and grooming. This can be especially common in individuals who live alone because there's nobody else there to remind them or pay attention or to be cued to take a shower because your spouse just took a shower, etc. Making a bad decision once in a while, such as forgetting to get an oil change, is normal. And that would be a normal, like typical age-related change, but not showering for a week isn't. Right now, we're going to hear from Teresa.
The way I kept my house, I wouldn't say I was OCD, but pretty close to it. And all of a sudden, everything was okay with me. It's like, oh, it's a pile, I'm tired. So my dining room table usually looked like it was someone's office, because I always would say I would do it tomorrow. And then my bedroom, as far as clothing, I would just put it in a corner, put it in a chair. And all of this is just, I wouldn't say it looked like I was a pet wreck, but really I was, because I never threw anything away. I always would say, I'll get to it, but I never did get to it. So just the way of my standard of living, it was actually decreasing.
Next, we're going to go on to number 9, withdrawal from work or social activities. This is one of the most common signs I hear from my support group attendees, that they talk about. One of the first things they noticed with their spouses before they were diagnosed is someone who was very social before and now doesn't want to go anywhere, or chooses to, they may be having Christmas dinner at their house and they may go sit in the bedroom by themselves in the dark. It's very concerning, obviously, for someone who was a salesperson or very jovial in like the life of the party before. As we age, it's normal to feel uninterested by family or social engagements at times. However, someone who is experiencing dementia-related changes may start to lose their ability to hold or follow a conversation. As a result, they may withdraw from others. They may get overwhelmed with lots of noise or too much going on. Instead of trying to sort it all out and figure it out, they just retreat to the room by themselves. Now we're going to hear from Dr. Salloway.
One of the most common changes, and early on, is the person's comfort zone shrinks a little bit, and then that gets worse throughout the course of the illness. So they're less comfortable going out, they're less motivated to do things than they were in the past. So there's some change in day-to-day functioning that way. I think people also lose confidence in their cognitive abilities, because they may not recognize someone or know their name or find the right word, and they'll feel awkward, and they don't want people to notice that, so they feel more comfortable at home or in situations with family where they're very, very comfortable with that wouldn't concern them. So people tend to withdraw a little bit and be less outgoing. That's can be one of the early signs of Alzheimer's.
Now we're going to talk about number 10, changes in mood or personality. This can actually get kind of confused with the one before about changes in how they handle social situations. Individuals with Alzheimer's or another dementia may become confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious. They might get easily upset either at home or when out of their comfort zone with others. As we age, however, it's normal to develop very specific ways of doing things and becoming upset or irritable when our routine is disrupted. But someone with Alzheimer's or dementia may become fearful, angry, or easily frustrated with that, which is something that should be addressed. Some of that can be addressed, of course, by medication, but some of it can also be addressed by just changes in your behavior as the spouse that's supporting the person with dementia, different ways to communicate with them, etc. Right now, we're going to hear from another expert.
Another early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia is subtle changes in behavior. So all of a sudden, the family may notice the person is more easily irritated, or more impatient, or a little moody, or have a shorter fuse, or more anxious. Now, there's lots of things that can cause that, but often that can be an early symptom of Alzheimer's or go along with the early symptoms of memory loss.
So now we're going to check in with the Garcias again. As we talked about earlier, Mary's daughters are concerned about the changes they're observing with their mom. They want to know when it's time to go see the doctor about the changes they're witnessing. Let's take a look at their conversation. Just talking about, yeah. I'm wondering if it's enough to see the doctor. So it's always serious enough to talk to the doctor. That's what I would say. Your doctor, especially when dealing with age-related changes, is not going to be bothered by you coming in and asking some questions. Go ahead and push play, Rick.
Memory is not all or none, especially when there are early symptoms or signs. So on a good day, people might function very well and not really even, no one notices there's a memory problem. But on other days, especially if they're tired, then things become more noticeable. So memory is variable. It's not all or none. And then there are different type of symptoms that develop for each person. So some people may have trouble with language, may have trouble with organizing themselves, may have trouble navigating while driving, and other people don't have the same symptoms. So you don't have to have every symptom of Alzheimer's to be concerned. And I think the most important thing is determining what has changed from that person's normal level of functioning. And usually people have a pretty keen sense of, what they can normally do well. And then when either they or the family notice that there has been some change from that usual pattern of functioning, that should be a warning sign to people. But they don't have to check off all the boxes.
So Dr. Salloway just gave us a great recap. It's important to remember that these warning signs are intended to be a guide to help identify problems with memory, thinking, or behavior that may be related to Alzheimer's or dementia. Individuals may experience part of the warning signs. They're probably not going to experience all of them. But if anything seems abnormal to you, it's never a bother to talk to your doctor. I had a gentleman years ago that was in his 50s, and I talked about the car keys, not knowing what the car keys were for. He had an issue one time where he was intoxicated. So his wife thought the issue was intoxication. He was intoxicated and he was trying to use sticks from a tree to start his four-wheeler instead of the keys. And then when she told him that those weren't the keys and that wasn't going to work, he got really angry with her and upset. And then he accused the grandkids of stealing the keys and hiding them from him. And the police were called, and the poor gentleman ended up in jail because he was only 55 years old, and nobody assumed that it was dementia that was causing these issues. It wasn't until months later that he was actually diagnosed with dementia. The fact that he was intoxicated, unfortunately, had masked some of the issues that were going on. But if you notice any signs that are normal, obviously it's not normal to have everyone arrested and sent to jail, but that's how it can escalate into anger. And he'd never been an angry or violent man before. It's just important to stay ahead of things. If you notice any of these signs in yourself or someone else, it's important to see the doctor. So now we're going to start talking about importance of early detection. It's key that we pay attention to what's going on with our own cognitive health and not dismiss any changes that we may be experiencing as normal aging, as well as that of others around us. Any change that's unusual for your level of functioning or that of someone around you is cause for concern. Many times friends and family are the first to notice changes in someone's behavior or memory. In this module, we'll discuss why it's critical to address any observed changes early and seek answers from a medical professional. Next slide, Rick. So first, we're going to hear from an expert.
It's a very interesting phenomenon that people who have memory problems are often less aware of it than family members or their friends who know them well. One of the reasons for that is our ability to monitor ourselves, which is an important part of brain function, decreases when we start having memory problems. Not in everybody, but commonly, and more than half the people with memory problems. And so the person is just not keeping track of the trouble they're having day to day. But the family members are, paying attention. If they're paying attention, they see, boy, this is starting to happen a lot, and the person's not aware of it. So the family's more aware, and they may talk to their loved one about it, and they say, I've noticed you've been repeating yourself. And they say, I'm not repeating myself. And that could either be due to the fact that they're not aware of it, or they may not want to acknowledge it.
Next, we're going to hear what Mary noticed about her family member.
I was so adamant about what was happening to Daryl. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And this wasn't the person that I know. This wasn't the person. Daryl was my husband was very, he always had to be building or designing or working with his hands. And it was getting to the point where he wasn't, and he was becoming very frustrated when he was forgetting to do things or go places.
So if you continue to observe these types of changes, it's critical that you plan to take the next step and have a conversation with the person or others close to them to hear about what they may have noticed as well. This can be a difficult or uncomfortable conversation to have, and the Alzheimer's Association has developed a roadmap of 10 helpful steps to help make addressing memory concerns less daunting and more productive. Let's take a look at those. Go ahead. So one of the things to ask is, what changes in memory, thinking, or behavior do you see? What is the person doing or not doing that's causing the concern? Next step. What else is going on? Various conditions can cause changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. Are there any other health or lifestyle issues that could be contributing to these changes, such as stress, diabetes, or change in medication? For instance, earlier I told you about my mom and her visual changes and the mistakes she's been making, but she has non-smoker's lung cancer and she's been on a chemo drug for 8 years. So we're trying to figure out, is this just something normal with the chemo medication or not? Next step, Rick. Learn about the signs and the benefits of early diagnosis. You've already taken the very important step by joining us for this program, talking about this, and we're going to talk more about what the benefits of that is. Next slide, Rick. Has anyone else noticed the changes? Talk with friends and family. What, if any, changes have they noticed? Next step. And then, of course, have a conversation. So prepare yourself and have that conversation. Next slide. Who should have the conversation to discuss these concerns? It could be you or a trusted family member or a combination. Or you can talk to your doctor and talk to the doctor ahead of time before a doctor's appointment and have the doctor bring it up in an inconspicuous way. Next slide, Rick. What is the best time and place to have the conversation? Well, I guess it just depends on where they're most comfortable. It's important to have the conversation as soon as possible and not put it off. In addition to identifying the date and time, you should also consider where they will feel most comfortable, such as home, in the car, or again with the doctor, possibly. Next slide, Rick. What will you or the person having the conversation say? Such as, I've noticed a change in you and I'm concerned. Have you noticed this? Are you worried? How do you feel about? Have you noticed any changes with how your brain is working lately? How have you been feeling lately? You don't seem like yourself, etc. Next slide, Rick. Offer to go with the person to the doctor. And again, you can send a fax or a note or call the doctor ahead of time before that appointment to cue them out into your concerns so the doctor can bring up the right questions to ask. Next slide, Rick. If needed, you may have to have multiple conversations. Don't be discouraged if the first conversation is not successful or if they're defensive. Write down some notes about how it went so you can prepare for the next conversation and maybe approach it a little differently. Next slide, Rick. You can also reach out to the Alzheimer's Association for support. We have a free 24/7 helpline where you can talk to master's level clinicians who can provide reliable support and information. They can also give you suggestions on how to have these conversations. Next step, Rick. Oh, we just talked about that. At the end of this, we're going to give you that toll-free numbers so you can contact the Alzheimer's Association. So the next step is to see the doctor. So most people address concerns about memory, thinking, and behavior with their primary care physician first. However, in some cases, the primary care physician may refer to a specialist. Examples of specialists include a geriatrician, who obviously specializes in elderly, so they see a lot of this. A neurologist who specializes in the brain, neuropsychologist who specializes in the brain's behavior, a psychiatrist who specializes in disorders that affect your mood or the way the mind works, and psychologists who have special training in testing memory and other mental functions. Next slide, Rick. So we know now what signs to look for and how to approach the conversation. Now let's discuss the benefits of early detection. It's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm having some tech issues here. It was not advancing. So let me try it again. My apologies, folks.
There you go. So we're gonna click now here and we're gonna watch a quick video.
There are a number of benefits in early detection of Alzheimer's. For one thing, a person is able to have a voice in what happens next. They can make plans. They can live life more on their own terms. They can also make plans for the future, financial plans, care plans. They can let people know what they want, which can be a real gift later on. It also allows time for families to make plans and to make decisions about who can do what and figure out care and those kinds of issues. Also, the treatments that are available for Alzheimer's don't cure Alzheimer's. They don't slow down the disease, but they do help with symptoms. And it seems as though they tend to work better the earlier a person is able to use those. So that can help too. Some people are interested in clinical trials. Clinical trials allow people to have access to treatments that aren't available yet. And for some people, that can be a really important thing to pursue.
So paying attention to changes you notice in people, especially regarding their memory, thinking, or behavior, is important for early detection. If you do observe unusual behaviors and concerns, take action. Consider using the 10 steps to approach the memory concern as a guide. Next slide, Rick. So next we're talking about seeking a diagnosis. Now we're going to take a look. Let's start by testing your knowledge of what we've already went through. Next slide. So who here thinks there's currently no way to diagnose Alzheimer's or dementia? Obviously we're in this class, on the Zoom class, so it's not going to work very good. So there's currently no way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. That is false. There are a number of assessments and tests that make it possible for healthcare professionals to diagnose Alzheimer's over another type of dementia. Next slide, Rick. Here we're going to explore possible steps of the diagnostic process. Assessments may include medical history, physical exam, screen for depression, etc. MRI is possible, maybe a possible way. So for instance, what is brain imaging? Brain imaging is magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, computerized tomography, CT scan, or a PET scan, which is a positron emission tomography scan, which can rule out conditions that may cause symptoms similar to Alzheimer's, but require different treatments or approaches, including brain tumors, aneurysm, stroke, or buildup of fluid in the brain. Next slide, Rick. Go ahead. So to do dementia, sorry. So again, we're talking to Garcias. We're going to hear what Dr. Saleh has to say.
Someone could have high blood pressure that's out of control, or they might have a thyroid condition that's not regulated, or diabetes that's not right, or on a medication that actually can cause memory loss. Drinking too much alcohol can make memory worse. So there are a lot of factors that go into cognitive difficulty with aging that some of them can be remedied. And so we want to do everything we can to improve cognitive ability and quality of life.
So let's review. The diagnostic process will vary from person to person, depending on the individual's specific situation and what the doctor feels is the right course of action for that person. It's going to depend on what other comorbidities they may have going on. The diagnosis may be something other than Alzheimer's or dementia. Go ahead. There are some stigma and misconceptions about Alzheimer's, like nothing can be done, that kind of thing that can deter people from getting an early diagnosis. But getting information and support is a critical next step. Let's learn a little bit more about that next. So what's next? Next slide, Rick. Let's see what others have to say. We're going to go to the after this. So the Alzheimer Association is in communities across the country, providing direct services to individuals and families facing the disease. Our mission is to eliminate Alzheimer's disease through the advancement of research, to provide and enhance care and support for all affected, and to reduce the risk of dementia through the promotion of brain health. Our vision is a world without Alzheimer's.
And actually, Stacy, our name and our vision and our mission have changed, and it hasn't been updated in this, but it's now a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementias. So we're focused on all dementias as well as Alzheimer's disease.
That's correct. Next slide, Rick. So we're available wherever and whenever you need reliable information and support. On the phone, the helpline is the number right there at the bottom left. There, it's 1-800-272-3900. That's the phone number I told you about earlier that's available 24/7, and it's the phone line is manned by master's level clinicians. So they're a great resource. There's also a ton of stuff at alz.org, including this presentation we just went through today. But there's many, many other education opportunities and opportunities to connect with either Zoom support groups or local support groups here in Boise, or online. There's a care network that you can, like, chat rooms to discuss with other people who may be caring for loved ones with dementia. There's a lot there.
On the CRF down there, that is the Community Resource Finder, and that's a program done in a partnership with AARP. So it was something that we both put together. And what that basically is, you could get on our website and plug in your zip code, and it'll come up with community resources in that area. And you could even do it from out of town. So as an example, if you had a loved one living in Southern California, you could plug in their zip code, and those resources would come up in that area that you could share with family. It's a wonderful program and a wonderful resource to have.
So there are multiple ways to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association if you're interested. There's obviously the memory walk. There's the longest day, which is coming up in June. There's lots of fundraising opportunities, but there's also lots of community support opportunities, such as support groups, et cetera, that we talked about.
Community educators, like what Stacy is doing today. And then we have advocacy, and those are the folks that are working with local, state, and federal lawmakers on any legislation that may be related to Alzheimer's or other dementias. So there's another way to get involved as well. And we just pretty much talked about those, except Trial Match. That's where you can get on the program, or excuse me, on our website, and you can plug in some information and it'll match you up with clinical trials that are going on in your area. Over here in Idaho, most clinical trials that get any area extensive generally are held in Seattle, Portland, or Salt Lake City. But it'll give you all that information, even clinical trials that may be held down in California or in Denver as well. Advocacy, I talked about. Stacy talked about the volunteer opportunities and the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is a wonderful, wonderful event. We hold it locally here at Kleiner Park. We also hold one in Twin Falls and one in Idaho Falls. I don't know if anybody's from Oregon or Washington, but they have multiple walks as well in their states. I cannot wait for this pandemic to be over so we can go back to a real walk and take a walk with some friends on a beautiful Sunday or Saturday fall afternoon rather than do it virtually.
Does anybody have any questions about what we discussed? We went through a lot of information today, and I'm here for support if you have any questions about any of those topics. We have a lot of great clinicians here in the Idaho area, neurologists, geriatricians, all kinds of different doctors, etc. If you need any recommendations to those as well.
I just moved over. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's Marie. One of the things I was thinking about and listening to is, they talk about the stages. So if someone is in the beginning stages, is there a time progression that this could go on? Or is it really not ever set, and each person would possibly have a different time frame from moving on from one stage to another?
Every person is very different. We have a saying in the industry that just says, if you meet one person with Alzheimer's, you've met one person, because no two cases are exactly the same. I've seen it progress very quickly from the time of diagnosis to the time of passing in 1.5 years. And I've also seen, I have a client right now, and the doctor told me he's had frontotemporal dementia for 20 years, and he's still driving. We just helped him to get his license. We helped the rest of the world to get his license because he was no longer safely driving. But he presents really well. And you could talk to that gentleman for 45 minutes and not even know anything was wrong with him. And they think he's had this for 20 years. So it really you just don't know. It depends on the individual.
Are most people on some type of medication throughout the process?
There are medications that they claim will slow down the process. Varying results, but yeah, there are lots of options to talk to your doctor about. There's supplements too. Just kind of depends on you and your interests, I guess, and what you're trying to do. There's medications to treat the symptoms. There's medications to slow the process. Pretty much whatever you're looking for, you can find medication for.
I think you had mentioned supplements, Stacy, and I think one needs to be careful with supplements. And I'm not picking on the supplement people. All I'm saying is there is not scientific evidence that supplements, despite what they'll tell you, that supplements cures Alzheimer's. And I don't know if you folks are like me, but I get a ton of emails, the advertising for supplements that'll actually say can cure my Alzheimer's or dementia, these supplements. But there is no scientific evidence, study done showing that supplements, in fact, will cure or slow down the process of Alzheimer's or other dementias.
Just talk to your doctor. Make sure that the advice you get is from your physician. That's what I will say. Not from
someone raising their hand here.
Go ahead.
It looks like it's falling under fire tablets. So do you want to go ahead and ask your question? the person that had their hand up, all I could see was that you were falling under fire tablet. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and ask your.
Oh, okay.
There you
Can
go.
you hear? Okay. We have parents that are, we think they're both presenting all of these symptoms or some of these symptoms. And it seems like we want to know how you tell the difference between a dementia and what might be the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, because they both have symptoms, but they're very different.
Well, first of all, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. Dementia is just the definition of memory loss, right? So you just need to talk to your doctor, and the doctor can do tests to determine what type it may be. But first of all, they need to determine if they actually have dementia. Do they actually have dementia, or do they have age-related memory loss that's
Well,
daily life?
okay, our father is 90, our mother is 83, and neither one will admit that this is happening.
So that's when I would say you call the doctor before the doctor's appointment, or send them a note and say, will you please bring up these items? I'm concerned my mom has dementia. Let the doctor bring it up. And so you're not the
Okay, and our father won't go to the doctor, so I guess we'll just let that one ride.
Well,
Actually-
there's organizations out there that will do home calls if it's
Yeah.
easier to get somebody out to his organization. There's Keystone, doctors,
Treasure
hospice.
Valley.
Yeah, Treasure Valley. They have primary care physicians, nurse practitioners, or PAs that will go out to the home.
They actually have geriatricians too. Like here, Keystone has a geriatrician and an internist on board as well.
He seems to do better. I'm her sister. He seems to do better when, and I live with them now, but he seems to do better like if I do projects with him. So if like we tackle plumbing projects, or if we go tackle something in the shop, it seems to help, but I don't know if that's just my perception of it or if that's really helping him.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes the things we can do with our hands can come automatic, and they will do better with that.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good to know. And the final question we have is, the thing that's going on with our mom is that she's never had much of a filter, but as she's gotten older, she has no filter. And the person that she's taking it out on the most, she's taking it out hardest the most on two people. One, my sister, who's sitting here beside me, who is their caregiver, and two is my dad. And she has pretty much emasculated our father. And that is really hard on us to watch that happen. And she just chips away at our dad. Well, it's not chips, it's big chunks on our dad every day. And how do we get her to stop doing that?
I don't know that you can. I think what I would do if I were you is I would take her to the doctor, and I would do exactly what I said. I would contact the doctor ahead of time and say, you're concerned she has dementia, and you want, them to do some testing while you're there, because there are some medications that could help. She might need, who knows what.
Okay.
She might need some, even Zoloft helps. I've seen mention that, but that's up to her doctor. And if her doctor, does she have a family doctor or a family?
She has many doctors.
Yeah.
She's on many medications for constant pain.
We could talk to doctor.
We could talk to her main doctor, yes.
I would talk to the main doctor and just see what he recommends, because they might be able to address it with an antidepressant or something that would really help her to at least lessen the sting a little bit.
And that could be the issue too. Dr. Salloway in the presentation, it could be depression, or it could be, you said she's on many medications. It could be the many medications that she's under or taking. And so that's why, talk with the doctor with a medication list and have the physician go over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It could be pain too. You mentioned she's in pain.
Yeah.
Pain will make it pretty nasty too. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that's it.
We-
Tom, I see your hand up. If you want to ask a question, Tom Fisher?
Hi.
Yes, I was going to mention, I've been reading a book, my wife and I've been reading a book from Dr. Sanjay Gupta on brain health and about the things that can help delay or hopefully prevent dementia and Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's being one form of dementia. And several things that make a big difference is getting enough sleep, eating healthy, and exercise. Those things all help a lot. So even if you're in early stages of dementia, whether it be Alzheimer's or some other dementia, all of those will help if you get enough sleep, if you eat healthy, and like you say, alcohol avoiding, there's lots of studies that say a little bit's good, but a lot is terrible. So you need to do that. Look at those things and see if lifestyle change can make a difference and help.
Yeah, a healthy lifestyle can never hurt. It's good for your heart health as well. So I think
Yeah,
that's a suggestion, Tom.
Figure if it's healthy for the heart, it's healthy for the brain. And there were a couple of clinical studies done. One called the Sprint Mind Study, where they compared a core group of patients where all patients had hypertension, but one core group was treated aggressively for their hypertension so that the higher end was 120 or less. And the other group was treated in the normal fashion where it would be 130 or less. And the group with the 120 or less had up to a 19% reduction in cognitive decline over a period of time. And then there was another study done, Tom, that relates to exactly what Dr. Gupta, and by the way, I haven't read it, I'm familiar with the book, I haven't read it yet. But what Dr. Gupta was referring to and you were referring to, and those are called the Pointer studies, and they originated in Europe and they carried over here into a second and third phase of the studies that the association is sponsoring. And that's basically what you addressed, Tom, and what Dr. Gupta addresses, and that's a healthy lifestyle and the correlation to the reduction of the onset of cognitive decline.
Go. It looks like we have another question. Go ahead.
Sure.
Hi, my mom had Alzheimer's or dementia. She was in a facility for months, and for 10 months I visited her every day, and she didn't know who I was. She didn't acknowledge that I was her daughter. We'd play games like cards or do a puzzle, or I'd read to her, or we'd just watch TV because some days she was kind of zoned out. But later on, near the end of the 10 months, she had, I walked in one day and she called me by name and we had a conversation about family, and she wanted to know how my siblings were doing and who were the people that had been visiting her. And we talked for hours, how she was feeling and everything about what was going on. And so I contacted the hospice people, and I said, I don't think we need hospice care anymore. Mom's come out of it. She's talking like she always has. And they told me that was a gift, and to contact the rest of the family so they could visit her or call her on the phone. And oh my gosh, I contacted everyone and they all came to visit. And of course, this was before the pandemic. So we had great visits and everything. And then it was 5 days. And then she was back to the person that didn't know anybody or didn't remember her name or didn't know any person in the family. Why does that happen?
Why does that happen?
Is there?
Well,
Yeah.
How long after that did she pass?
It was almost 3 weeks.
That is actually a common thing to happen before they pass away. We call that rallying, where they have this mental clarity, and just like Casca said, it's a gift, right? Not everybody gets that
Oh,
opportunity.
yeah. Yeah.
When it
I was
happens.
amazed at how lucid she was and how she didn't remember that she had been gone for months. She didn't have any recollection of that. She didn't remember that my dad had died while she was in that fog. But we took her to the cemetery and she got to say goodbye.
Yeah, I had a client that didn't have any family or anyone to advocate for him, and he had been in the hospital for 4 months, and they had labeled him as being violent and sexually inappropriate. And I didn't want to take him because I was moving him into a memory care facility with other vulnerable adults. So I said no. And finally, I assessed him 3 times. The third time, I was paying attention and I realized that he was blind and he was going out in the hallway to urinate. And when they would stop him, he would strike out at the caregivers. So he wasn't sexually inappropriate. They labeled him as exposing himself. He was trying to go to the bathroom. And when you got to go, you got to go. So when they would stop him, he would hit them. So based on his notes, he was violent and all these terrible things. Finally, I figured what was happening and I took him into my care facility, but I was worried. I wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong. So I had a one-on-one caregiver with him for a couple of weeks to make sure that I was right, that he wasn't going to hurt anybody. And anyway, months later, he was kind of my special project, right? Like I cared about him. His name was BJ. Months later, a few weeks before he died, he grabbed my hand and he said, "I recognize your voice. You're the one that saved me." And I'll never forget that moment because I didn't even know he knew who I was. And he said,
Oh yeah, I was totally unprepared for that experience, that Mom would have that clarity. And I wish somebody had prepared us for that, because I really thought that she had turned the corner, but it was just a gift. And yeah. I will always be thankful for that.
You should be. It is a gift. But yeah, that happens sometimes. They just have this moment of clarity, and it's usually in the last few weeks before they pass.
Yeah, it was almost, it was like 1 day short of 3 weeks to the day from the first day of clarity. It was like, wow, it was pretty special.
Yeah, I'm glad you had that opportunity.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I'm Judy Haskell, and I'm just wondering the probability of inheriting Alzheimer's, because my parents had it.
Well, it puts you at a higher risk if your parents did, and they actually can do a genetic test, and they're looking for the ApoE3 gene. And if you carry that, and it's kind of a misconception that if you carry that, you're going to get Alzheimer's. It doesn't mean that you're going to get Alzheimer's, that you're at a higher risk because you carry that gene. So if you have a concern about that, I would talk to a genetics counselor, and they have wonderful genetics counselors over at St. Luke's and St. Alphonsus in this area, and any major hospital will have genetics counselors as well. But again, it doesn't mean if you carry that you're going to get the disease. It just means you're at a higher risk, just as African Americans and Native Americans and women are at higher risk than men of getting Alzheimer's or other dementias.
I still maintain that's just because we live longer though, Rick. We can't.
Well, that's one of the theories. That's one of the theories behind it, and then there's the other theory too, that men die younger because they have to, never mind.
Because they have to deal with us women.
Yeah. But yeah, and that's Judy, that's a very good point. You know, my folks had it, so I'm a little concerned, and it's okay to check it out. But if you do carry those genes, right, just like any high risk population, that's where, as Tom talked about earlier, lifestyle, and you cut your risk if you have a healthy lifestyle. And always remember, what's healthy for the heart is healthy for the brain.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when I grew up, there was a term that was used with, quote, the old folks as senility. And that's the only thing you heard. And I'm going back to the 50s here. And it said, oh, they're just getting senile. They have senility. Was that really a valid, word that would now fall under dementia?
I don't view it as a valid. I view it as an old-fashioned term, and I think it was because it was a term that was used because they were not able to diagnose the source of the dementia. And we experienced that. My father had Parkinson's induced dementia, and when my brothers and I were concerned about it, and we went to his doctor, who's an old school doc, the same doc that my dad had had for 40 some odd years. And I remember him saying to us kids, well, your dad's just getting senile. That's what happens when you get old. And it's just an old term. And I think it's because they didn't know or couldn't or didn't know how to diagnose the source of the dementia.
Yeah, they didn't have all the tools they have now.
Yeah.
Right. So anyone with any other questions for either Rick or Stacy?
Can you see the screen that I put up there? The Healthy Brain Know to Understand the survey. Is it showing up? Okay. Yes. I just want to, again, this is what I talked about in the beginning, folks. Researchers from the Center for the Study of Aging at BSU, they conduct an evaluation. It's anonymous. It'll ask some demographic information. If you would please take a few minutes to complete that survey. Stacy, it'll ask the facilitator's name, and it's Stacy Gunnarsson. Her name's down there. And you can email me, and my email address is there, and I will send you a link for that survey. I never see the results of it. Nobody at the association does. Stacy won't. It goes directly to the Center for Aging Studies at Boise State, and from there it's forwarded on to the Idaho Commission on Aging, and we would sure appreciate your help with that.
Great. And also, I just wanted to tell everyone there is another class next week, another presentation, if this subject does interest you, that is called Understanding Alzheimer's and Dementia. It's next Wednesday, the 7th, and it's an afternoon from 1 to, we have it down for 1 to 2:30. So that's another class to attend if you'd like to go further into this subject.
Lisa will be teaching that one, and she's really great. She's an occupational therapist in Eastern Idaho.
Yeah, she's a Dr. Lisa Hong. She has her doctorate in occupational therapy, specializes in dementia in her practice over there. She's a former professor at Idaho State University. So yeah, she does a wonderful job. And what that Understanding Alzheimer's and Dementia, where Know the 10 Signs that Stacy just went over, touches on what to look for. This goes one step further in understanding what's happening. And then Stacy does another real good one related to behaviors. And hopefully we can set something in communication, and we can set something up with AARP going forward and present that one, so we can do like a series down the line.
Oh, that would be fun.
That would be great. We would appreciate that. We'll have to make that happen. So I'd like to thank all of you for being part of this. And we'd also like to thank both Rick and Stacy giving their time and information to us. And AARP appreciates all that you have invested in giving us the 10 signs here that I'm sure many of us will think about and carry on. So thanks again for everyone tuning in today.
Thank you.
Like I said,
Thank you, everyone.
This will be a recording. So if for some reason you want to pass this on to someone, we'll have this recording